Dr. Susanna Bergin is an embodiment coach and a chiropractor. She supports women in finding ease in their bodies so that they can find clarity, purpose, and joy in their lives. Hello, everybody. I'm so pleased to have today with me on the Healer Hub podcast, Susanna Bergin. Hey, Susanna.
I am so excited to be here.
Yes, so are we. So we met through our certification, our common certification, sex, love, and relationships coach. But you have a background as a chiropractor and a body worker. So I would love to
Mhm.
know more about who you are and what your background story is.
Yeah, so I my journey started as a teenager when I was diagnosed with trauma around the age of 18 with PTSD, and I was sort of shuffled into a very traditional talk therapy route, as many of us are, and it I got a lot from it, but at a certain point, my therapist, and this being maybe 10 years into talk therapy, my therapist was telling me that she thought I was doing really well, and I was still experiencing panic attacks fairly regularly. So I was kind of like, I don't really feel like I'm doing great. um, but the conversation we had sort of led me to understand that from her perspective, I had received what I was going to receive from the traditional talk therapy route. And so I started looking around for other options. Simultaneously, my own career was in anti racism education and social justice organizing. And I was doing all of this organizing work around intergenerational trauma in schools and nonprofits. But I was getting really burned out, and I was seeing everyone around me get so burned out. And so I started questioning my own career path. And luck would have it that I happened to have a girls' weekend planned right around the time all of these giant questions were coming up in my life, both personally in my own healing journey and in my career. And I was talking to a friend who has been one of my best friends since we were like 11 years old. And she was telling me about working with a chiropractor who specializes in mental health and trauma healing. And it was this light bulb moment. I was like, I couldn't sit still for days. I was just hooked. My body just knew. My body knew the path. And I started doing some research. I hadn't taken a science class since high school. I had I had no science background whatsoever, but I decided to just take a leap of faith and started massage school a month later, and it was the most magical experience of my life. To this day, massage school is the most fun I've ever had, and it's the healthiest I've ever been. You get massage every single day because you're practicing on each other. And I just fell in love with the body. I fell in love with anatomy and physiology and working with my hands and using my hands to heal people, and getting to witness my clients connecting to their bodies was just like still to this day is one of the most beautiful things I ever get to see. And but my plan was always to specialize in mental health and post traumatic stress. So I've done a bunch of certifications. I've done somatic experiencing training, as well as our sex, love, and relationship coaching certification. And then later on went to become a chiropractor to just enhance those hands-on skills even more, and develop a much deeper understanding of the nervous system. And it's really led me to the career of my dreams. I really believe that the body is the key to healing, and the key to particularly to what we label as mental health healing. I think it's a little damaging to separate it from physical healing. And I love getting to build that bridge for my clients. So that's a little bit about what I do.
Yeah, I completely forgot that you also have the somatic experiencing background. So it would be interesting. You mentioned intergenerational trauma.
Hmm.
I'd love for you to expand a little bit more on that, and also touch upon how trauma is stored inside the body and where exactly it is stored.
Absolutely. So I'm going to start with how trauma is stored within the body. So when we experience an event that is too much for us to process in the present moment, our body will basically store it away, like save it for another day. It'll just put it in a box and just be like, we're going to keep that on the shelf until she's ready for it. And this can happen anywhere. I mean, physically speaking, the body can place it. It's not really as tangible as we might necessarily think. In that metaphor of like actually putting a box on a shelf, but our body will store it in the form of like stored energy. So that can that often shows up as potential energy, as in a contortion of the muscular or bone system. So that will basically, when you contort the body into a particular position, and I'm exaggerating here, these are going to be very small shifts in our posture, but it'll create potential energy in the muscles and the fascia and in the bones because there's tension there. And as you start to work with that tension and you start to release it, that energy will open up. The body will be able to use the energy more efficiently. It may also release emotion, it may release sound, it may release tears, it may release movement. Um, but but at the end of it, the energy is there for your body to use in a more efficient way, as opposed to being locked in place. Which occurs, like I said, when you experience an event that you don't have the resources to process properly. And so intergenerational trauma um, is something that's still being studied extensively. And the context that I was working with it in the context of anti-racism education and social justice organizing was looking at trauma around social identity and trauma around race, sexuality, physical ability, class, all those things. When we experience oppression on a regular basis, it creates trauma in the body just the same way being in a car accident might. It doesn't necessarily happen with such extreme, like in the moment extreme drama that a car accident might, although it certainly can. There have been many instances in history when that's happened. But um, small acts of oppression on a regular basis are going to create that kind of stress and tension on the body, just the same way a traumatic event might. So intergenerational trauma needs to be given just as much space and airtime in the concept of trauma healing as anything else that we might traditionally label as trauma, like abuse or a car accident or being in a war or anything like that. And when it comes to the body, like I said, the body doesn't interact with the world the way our rational brain does. So talking and processing the story of what happened is important, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. The body piece is just as important, and it doesn't necessarily get addressed that often. The body expresses through function, through posture, through sound, and through movement primarily. And so those pieces of trauma healing have to be addressed in order to have a complete healing journey. And that's a lot of what my work focuses on.
Yeah, and I think I saw this research some years back on mice or rats, and basically they saw that the trauma that was created for one generation was remembered by the generation that wasn't exposed to the same stimuli, the same kind of trauma. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because trauma is a function of the nervous system. So the nervous system is sort of the system that is deciding whether or not this particular event can be processed in the present moment, or whether this event has to be stored away for a later date. And so if the nervous system says, this is too much, we're going to store it away, that's also triggering a survival response, a response of there's danger here. And so if you think about it from a survival perspective, of course, the nervous system would want to pass that on to future generations. That's a survival tactic. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I imagine that it's also related to whatever didn't find healing within that generation needs to find healing, like the grander scheme through other generations.
Absolutely, absolutely. When we look at it from a more energetic perspective, it's the healing wants to occur. The the lesson wants to be learned. And so it will continue presenting itself in opportunities for it to be learned and healed, whether it is in this lifetime or in another, for sure.
Yeah. So what do you see healing as, and how does it relate to the modalities that you are using with your clients?
Hmm. So it's such a good question. People ask this question all the time, and everyone has a different answer. To me, healing is a commitment, first of all. It's a commitment that we make every single day to continue showing up for our bodies, showing up for our aligned path, showing up for our higher selves. And I think what really allows us to do that is presence. So being present in the moment, being present in our experience, and being present with whatever is alive for us in our bodies in the moment. So, and sometimes that is actually being like, sometimes it's actually being not being present. Sometimes our nervous system is giving us the information that we need to check out for a little bit. And we get to choose that. We get to prioritize what our body wants. The freeze response is essentially a form of disassociation, and it's a perfectly normal, healthy nervous system response. And sometimes we need that. And so I think presence is really the biggest key to healing.
And what kind of modalities? So you did mention some of the modalities that you are using with your clients. Are there any others, and how specific can you get, or how tangible can you get about the modalities that you are using?
Yeah, I mean the truth is I use all of them. Somatic experiencing, I would say, has provided me with the greatest paradigm for how I work. It's an amazing framework to understand the nervous system and trauma. Um, and it really has given me the foundation of how I approach the body and a client in any situation. Um, and from there, I use different tools from massage, chiropractic, and coaching to address whatever I'm seeing is presenting in the nervous system at any given moment.
Yeah, and I celebrate your journey of um, trying, giving talk therapy a try. I think that we've all been through that, and we all kind of reach the same conclusion that it has its limitations and it doesn't really touch upon releasing the trauma for good. I have conversations with people around trauma and specifically somatic experiencing, because when they hear the experiencing part, they get scared, thinking that they're
Yeah.
going to get re traumatized. So, could you speak a bit about the process of somatic experiencing and how it is actually safe enough that you do not get into a re traumatizing cycle?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I think those fears are very justified because it certainly can happen. The nervous system, there's no one who can be a true expert of someone else's nervous system. We are our own. We when we are acting as clients, we have to be an active player. And that's why so much of my work with my clients really focuses on nervous system education. I want my clients to understand how their own nervous systems work. I want them to understand, what does it feel like when I feel myself starting to get activated or starting to get triggered, so that we can pause and back off. Because I've been taken way too far in sessions before, and I've had that experience of having to recover from a session for weeks sometimes. And and so so I guess, to answer your question, somatic experiencing as a paradigm is taught in a way where theoretically we are being very careful to take people where they are comfortable to go, and to take people to a place where their body is showing that it's ready to release. And the nervous system will do what it will. One of the principle, and I'm just pulling on a principle from chiropractic here. Uh, when we talk about chiropractic philosophy, we talk often about, like, the chiropractor introduces a force to the system, and then the body takes that force and does with it what it will. So the body is the healer. And I look at a somatic experiencing session, or using somatic experiencing in a session with a client, the same way. I'm introducing an input, and the body's going to do with it what it will. So I necessarily have to be acting with enormous caution, because I don't know what the body's going to do with it. We as practitioners can never know what the body will do with an outside input. And so all of that to say, to answer your question, trauma work takes enormous bravery. There will be times when you experience pain or challenge during trauma healing. And I deeply hope that you never have to experience someone taking you far enough into re-traumatization, although I can't promise it. What I can say is that every time I was pushed too far by a practitioner, I learned my own strength more. I learned my boundaries more. I learned my intuition more, because the truth was, I shouldn't have been working with those practitioners to begin with. There was something in me that knew it wasn't right, and I said yes anyway. And I don't mean that in, like, a blame the victim kind of way. Of course, we want and expect our practitioners to be the expert in the room. And it has to be a co-creative experience. So if you feel like your voice is not being heard, if you feel like you're unsure of where this person is taking you, you're unsure of their goals for you, you're unsure of whether they can hold you in moments of vulnerability, they're not the right practitioner for you. And it does take shopping around. It really does. And so, for anyone out there who's feeling afraid of the potential of re-traumatization, I feel it so deeply in my heart, because I've been there, and I want you to know, first of all, you'll get through it, and second of all, it's still worth doing the trauma healing work, even if there are low points along the way.
Yeah, thank you for naming that. I think that for me, what is coming up is that there are two dimensions. So the first dimension is that the healing journey is not a linear one, and people at the beginning, we all tend to think that, oh, it's going to be this one time, then, I go to this one person and then everything is going to be great because they are going to save me and they're going to put all back together the
Right.
parts that are not aligned. And then you start understanding that it's not really like that. It's extremely painful at moments, the whole process. But the thing is that it's a pain that is chosen because in the end, you do know that there is going to be solace. Whereas the pain that we are in when we are reaching out for help, it's a pain that is not really in our, like, we don't have ownership over that pain. And then this leads me into the second aspect, which is um, something that you already mentioned, trusting that you are the person who is generating and leading the process, and the practitioner is somebody who is supporting that process. And of course, if you have like spiritual beliefs that there is a god or the universe or like a benevolent force, then that benevolent force also supports the process. And it's really, really important for people to set boundaries and to say when they don't feel comfortable with certain things. Just yesterday, I was at an event and I was thinking about this, how a lot of us who are into the realm of healing and helping and supporting people, sometimes we come with the willingness to help people, but also the desire to confirm that we are good at what we are doing, and to reaffirm the coach identity, the therapist identity. And I felt in this space that when people are coming primarily from the space of, I want the person that I am working with to recognize, or the people around, if it's a group session, to recognize how marvelous I am at this. That energy taints the whole process, and you can feel that the people are not really in service to that process or to the person, and it feels so painful. For me, it felt really painful and really triggering, because I would much rather not go through this at all than be in the space of somebody's confirming their professional identity by having a session with me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, to me, I I I just feel like trauma healing is one of the most courageous acts anyone ever undertakes. And I'm also speaking about myself when I say that. Like, I look at my own trauma healing journey and I'm like, god damn, like I really did that. Um and it's and if there's any other energy that I'm coming to my client with other than like awe and admiration and affirmation, then I know I need to check myself. Um, because you're so right. And we're working with the nervous system. The nervous system is delicate and intricate and so nuanced and so brilliant. Like, all of these patterns and all of these blocks and all of these, aspects of our trauma spider web within us are there for a reason. Like, it was a survival. It was completely brilliant, and it was serving us this whole time. And so we we have to approach it from that place. And if you're not, I think it's very likely that you're causing harm.
Yeah. Yeah, and not to say that, I think that we've all been there. I remember during our certification, at one point I had a session with one of the peers, and there was just so much projection. I was not even aware of the fact that my agenda had tainted the whole session. And um, yeah, it was a very difficult situation when she drew boundaries and she told me, I cannot do this. This is too much for me. But I also learned so much from the way that you can repair that trust that is broken in that moment. Because I stepped too much into my own self, into what I believed was good and proper for her that moment, without checking in with her and seeing where she's at and what she needs, and being basically in service of her journey and not my own expectations of it.
Yeah, and I think that is such a beautiful example because, that similarly for me, the experience of the coaching exchanges we did during our certification were so powerful because I got to feel what it felt like to be an empowered client. Like I knew what was going to happen. I knew what the expectations were. I knew the point of the exercises. Um, and because of that, I was really similar to that story you just shared. Like I was really able to hold my boundaries in sessions with people who I had just met. And um, and I think we as practitioners, we're human. Like we are human first. We are always going to be human first. And of course, ego is a part of it. Of course it is because we're human. It like there's if you're if you're denying that, I mean, it's just part of the package. And so when we are educating our clients and we're empowering them and we're showing them the skill set and we're checking in with them really regularly and teaching them how to, like, what is my boundary? How do I feel a boundary in my body? How do I then express it out loud? Like we're creating that safe space and that relationship. You can absolutely repair it, and it can be so healing.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for acknowledging that. Uh,
Yeah.
what is your biggest life dream at this moment?
Oh gosh, that's a hard question right now. My biggest life dream. I mean, I right now my biggest dream is really to find, I mean, this is personal, but to find uh my husband and I are currently deciding where we're going to land for our forever home, and that is something that both of us are really yearning for, and feeling like really that deep sense of home. That's really what I'm dreaming about on a regular basis right now.
Yeah, I hear that desire. it's,
Mhm.
it's so important to have a physical space where you can ground and lay your roots. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
I celebrate that. I hope that you are gonna feel the land calling and what is appropriate for you and your family.
Yes, I'm listening.
Yeah, sometimes it's only that, just listening, hearing the whispers.
Yeah.
What motivates you
Mhm.
to do the kind of work that you are doing?
My clients, witnessing them and seeing the looks on their faces when something clicks and they feel their body in a new way. I mean, to me, my own experience of growing up as a woman in the US um, really involved massive disconnection from my own body. I think for a lot of my teenage years and my 20s, I think I was pretending I didn't even have a body. you know, I think I was sort of pretending that I was walking around as a floating head because it was just too painful to deal with the complexity of being in a female body in the US. I didn't know how to handle it. And coming back home to my own body, and of course, that's really the sense of home, is just being in my body. But coming back to this connection to this vessel has been the biggest blessing I think I've ever been given. And so getting to share that with other women feels incredibly motivating.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for naming that. It's it's probably something that a lot of women are gonna resonate with. I remember I had a photographic project when I was living in France, and we were doing analog photography, so film photography. And my project's name was "I am not my body, je suis pas mon corps."
Mm,
Because I think that, yeah, maybe there was this layer of not fully identifying with my body and struggling to accept the form that I was in, and also intuitively knowing that I'm so much more than my
love
body.
it.
But it's really, really beautiful. I was thinking about that also today, that it's really, really beautiful when you settle inside your body. And of course there are, like, like the friction every once in a while, and then you kind of like find the space again. But it's so irrefutable, and it's just such a strength to be fully expanded and to arrive and to feel that you are you inside your body. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to honor everyone's belief system. For me personally, I do believe in multiple lifetimes, and I often come back to this place of like this body, I only get I only get her once. And I just, you know, I missed out on a lot of time with her because of my own trauma and experience of being a woman and a young girl in the US, and I just want to savor every moment I have with her.
Yeah, I love that. It's a really beautiful perspective to savor every moment with your body.
Mhm. Yeah.
What do you find most rewarding in your work or maybe in your life?
Mm. Um I mean, I find a lot of I think I think I'm someone who like derives pleasure from a lot of different aspects, but for me my hands-on work, the chiropractic work is my flow. That's where I'm like I am in my most natural state. I don't feel in my head about it at all. I just am in the energy of the body and I'm listening to my hands and I'm flowing and getting to witness the transformation that happens on the table, I would say is some of the most rewarding aspects of my work. I mean, what can happen in 10 minutes of just presence with the nervous system on the table and gentle input. I mean, so little input. Like the body doesn't need much. Um, it's just amazing.
That is so interesting. Maybe in the States you practice something differently, because my chiropractor cracks me. Every bone in my body, putting all the vertebrae back in, it's a full cracking session.
Yeah, so that's the most traditional kind of chiropractic. What I practice is a little different. It's much more. It's very very gentle. And it's yeah, it's a little different. So that's certainly done here in the U.S. too. It's just not what I do.
So is it more soft tissue manipulation or more energetic? Yeah.
Yeah, I would call it more energetic. The contact points are still along the spine, but it's working with the energy systems the bioenergetic system, the emotional energetic system, the mental energetic system, and then what we call the soul energetic system, which would be like connection to purpose, connection to community, connection to something greater than ourselves, and accessing all of those through points on the spine.
Wow, that's actually very interesting. So,
It's pretty magical. I love it.
so is it related to the chakra system and also to meridians and energetical points along the spine?
Um, no, it's although both of those systems are brilliant as well. It's just not they're not part of this particular system. This system is working. It's the contact points are based off of what are called the dentate ligaments, which is where the spinal cord connects to the spinal column. And so most chiropractors are assessing individual joint motion in each vertebra in the spine. This particular system, which is called network spinal, in case anyone wants to look up chiropractors around them who practice it, is looking at the position of the spinal cord and where tension is being held in the whole spinal cord, and releasing the tension in the spinal cord, because that's really what's going to affect the person holistically. And if we're able to allow the spinal cord to release tension, it just like everything flows better. Just everything flows better.
Yeah, it does. It does sound. It does sound like that.
Yeah.
Who is your inspiration, and why do you find them inspiring?
Hmm. That's a good question. Um, I certainly have people in the industry who I look up to, in the coaching industry and in the chiropractic industry. I would say Julia Wells is a huge inspiration of mine. Layla Martin, who taught us our coaching certification. Mama Gina. And I would say that those women really inspire me, and I take their practices into some of the much more masculine led fields like somatic experiencing, like chiropractic, and I'm able to pull a lot of that inspiration and joy and pleasure and excitement and turn on into some of these fields that have, they have just as much brilliance, but they're maybe a little dull. So I like to bring a little spark to it.
Okay. You mentioned that you would like to lead us into a nervous system regulation, or to share with us a nervous system regulation tool.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So, this is a tool that was taught to me in somatic experiencing. It's the number one tool I teach to every single one of my clients. I teach it in every class I do. It's one of the most foundational tools you could ever practice, and it can take 2 seconds. It can take 15 minutes. It's sort of once you get used to it and practiced at it, you'll just start noticing that you're naturally doing it all the time, because it's actually a very natural function of the nervous system. But so many of us are living in traumatized bodies, it becomes harder and harder to do this. So, this is called orienting. And all it is simply connecting to your five senses and your surroundings. So, the five senses are the way that your nervous system takes in the world around you through sight, touch, taste, smell, and sound. And we use our five senses to connect to the present moment. So when we are disassociated in some way, some of these senses can get kind of fuzzy, and it becomes much harder to connect to the present moment. If we're not connected to the present moment, our nervous system is necessarily going to be wondering, like, if a tiger jumps out from behind me, am I going to notice? Like, am I going to be aware enough to know that I have to run? Which is naturally going to put us into a more stressed state if our nervous system is like, I don't know if she's going to run away if a tiger shows up. You know what I mean? So by orienting on a regular basis, we're letting our nervous system know, yes, I'm aware. Yes, I'm present. Yes, I will run if a tiger shows up. And it starts to bring us into a more relaxed state. And so if you practice this every day or even a few times a day, it can just start to, over time, bring you into a much more regulated nervous system. So go ahead.
I wanted to ask you about this, but probably you're leading into it. I'll just let you go.
Oh, you can ask a question though. Please feel free.
It was about this. So basically, we are connecting with each sense and then we are using that sense to absorb the reality around us.
Yeah. So I like to do it with, I usually teach it with sight and touch. And as you get more practiced at it, you can start to sort of like tailor your surroundings to your orienting practice. So, like, for example, you might, like, I have this fuzzy pen that I use whenever I'm feeling a little stressed, I'll use my fuzzy pen because I can, like, at any time, I can just be like, oh, that feels nice. I'm just going to help myself come back into the present moment a little bit because it feels so soft on my cheek. And so you can start sort of having more tools around you to orient more easily. But in the beginning, as you're just getting comfortable, you just start doing it anywhere you are. So I'll guide us through it right now. So to start out, you can just let your eyes wander around whatever space you're in. And it doesn't matter where they wander, you just let your eyes be the guide, let them go wherever they want to go. And at some point, you might notice them kind of land and linger on one particular thing. And if they do, you just let them linger. And for me, that's happening. I'm lingering on the trees outside my window and the birds on the branch. And I'm just letting my eyes take it in. I am noticing this green color. It's like I can really tell that it's starting to be summer. A few weeks ago, those leaves were this really bright springtime green, and the green has gotten a lot deeper and darker. So we're really getting into summer, and I see all the pigeons flocking together on this one branch weighing it down, and I'm just noticing, just letting my eyes kind of enjoy that image. Then you might notice a yawn or a deep breath. That's just a sign of coming into a little bit more presence. And as your eyes are enjoying this view, whatever it is that they're landing on, you could maybe also start letting your hands explore the area right around you. You could notice if there's any particular texture that feels nice. Maybe there's like a part of your body that wants a little bit of touch. Maybe you could give yourself little squeezes on your arms or on your thighs. Maybe you're wearing a piece of clothing that feels really soft, or maybe the wall around you feels nice and cool. Just starting to notice. For me, I'm sitting in this chair that is kind of like a suede texture and it feels really cool. So I'm just letting my hand kind of run over it, just enjoying that feeling of cool softness on my whole palm. And for me, it feel my hand really likes moving nice and slow. Maybe your hands want to move fast, or maybe they don't want to move at all. And just noticing how your body feels now, noticing if maybe you feel a little more grounded, maybe you feel a little more relaxed. You can even hear it in actually, like, you can hear that the tone of my voice dropped a little bit. I'm just more present. And just taking one or two more deep breaths. And a little wiggle and a stretch. And that is a little taste of what orienting is.
Mhm. Thank you so much. I'm always yawning so much because I release easily. So yes,
Yeah.
this is how it goes. Yeah. Thank you so much, Susanna. Where can we find you online?
So, my main channels are TikTok at Dr. Susanna Bergin or my newsletter, which can be found through my website, which is www.centerforfullexpression.com. And I I I have a Facebook and Instagram, but I really don't. I'm not active on them, so I'm not even going to mention them. So TikTok and my newsletter are the places to find me.
Great, and everything is gonna be in the footnotes. Anything else that you would like to share with us?
I just want to say thank you so much. This was awesome, and I love what you're sharing with the world. So it's been a joy.
Thank you. I really appreciate your energy and thank everybody for tuning in. The best way to support the Healer Hub podcast is to review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and share it with your people. Thank you so much. Deeply grateful for your support.